Hey guys, welcome back to another LEGO City update, and this one I think is going to be pretty big because we have made some huge changes in the LEGO City, starting with the entire table layout configuration. We have added a train, we have powered up the Ferris wheel, and guys, let me tell you, I think I pinpointed the type and style of city that I want going forward. So I am super excited to show this off to you today. There are so many ideas wrapped up in here, so many things to unpack, so let's get started. Before we dive into the elevated train track, let's take a minute to recognize May the 4th be with you. And please note there are tons of LEGO Star Wars minifigures hanging around the city today, many more than probably usually would be. However, I may or may not have gotten the configurations right. We may have good guys and bad guys hanging out together. In fact, we've got an Ewok, a Chewbacca, a Snowtrooper, and then I know that one's a good guy. But I don't know his name, all hanging out in the same area. This is a day, their holiday. So we put them all around the city. So make sure throughout the video that you take a look at all the different ones we have. It's pretty fun. All right, guys, let's talk elevated train track. So if you want a train track in a small space, which is exactly what I have, you need to come in with your train track first and decide where it is going to go before you add buildings and then try to force the train around it. I do not have a large surface area. Again, 64 base plates kind of sounds like a lot, but once you start taking that up with buildings and roads, and for me a canal, the train area shrinks greatly, and in a lot of cases where there are corners for the train track, you lose a lot of space. But if train tracks are important to you, you need to put them in first. So although train track is super important to me, my canal is also first. So think about things in order of importance. For me, I want to make sure that there's always room for a canal and for the water area that goes along with the canal. So in this configuration of the city, the water area is going to look a little bit different. We've got an entire corner of the table dedicated to a water area, and we will potentially put in Ninjago City Gardens here when it's built, or maybe not, we could take it out, but we just put in a base plate so that while we were building things and putting in the train track, we had a place marker. But I think Ninjago City Gardens will look awesome here, and should we get another table in the future, and should we put it right there, the rest of Ninjago City and the docks can flow off the table. So I think there is a lot of possibility. But we wanted to make sure that we had a waterway worked in where we could have some boats and things. And this also gives us the opportunity to play around with a train curve in the city so that you don't have just sort of a straight square type of layout. This gives it a little something fun. It does go in between the tiki and the diner. It's a bit of a tight fit, but it does work with a little shuffling. And I think it just gives it a little bit of interest as it winds through. So let's take a look at that. Let's power it up. So we've got the powered up app going, and we're just gonna send the train through, and I'll talk over the noise, but I think it works really nicely. The train does slow down a little bit going through, which is okay with me, just so it doesn't clip a building. But here it is coming through the center, and I think it looks great with that little bit of a curve. And the city is a small area, so you can't have too many of those going through, but to have one does break it up and give it a little bit of interest. So having the elevated train track actually allows us some extra space to create some areas of interest. You can see that I've placed the arcade pods that I recently received there. I'm hoping to do the different types of market stands that the Lego Artisan has shown off on his YouTube channel, and to add there as a little shopping area for the figs. And this is a nice thing that I'll be able to do all over the city, because as you can see with all of those girders, there's going to be a lot of opportunity for smaller builds. There is a potential to make a double thick track that would reduce the amount of girders that I would need, so that would free up some more usable space underneath the train. We're gonna play around with that idea and just see how it might work for us in such a small area. But another area I like is over by the shrimp shack. So the shrimp shack has actually been one of my favorite builds for quite some time, but never really fit into the layout of my old city with all of the modulars. But I brought it out today to add it back in, because as you can see with this train track curve here, you do end up with some funky space because you've got to have room for the girders to go. And although this isn't probably the best layout, and the blue is not necessarily meant to represent water, I do have the opportunity to place the surf shack in here because it's a smaller build that fits well in a smaller space and can be configured around something like the train track. And the sign is awesome. It gives it some nice height, and I do have a guy up on top here. But I think that that is exactly the way we want to use the areas in front of the train station, with smaller builds and scenes, working around the girders as much as possible. But as I mentioned, we do have a potential idea of a double train track where you would actually add 1x2s here with an additional train track on top, as a way to make almost a Mills track, I guess you would call it. And that is supposed to eliminate a lot of girders. And hopefully that would actually give us more room for builds and things, because as you can see, it's sort of a sea of girders if we want to make a nice sturdy track going around the table. So there's some things to think about and play around with there. If you've seen a double track before like that, feel free to pop a comment down below, because it could work out well in this small city situation. So this is really the city that I have always wanted to achieve, but I felt so tied to having all of the modulars and then some in the city that I wasn't able to, move forward with this type of plan. I didn't think it was attainable because I had to have all of the modulars in the city. But now that I've moved past that, and I can't believe it took me that long to do so, we can really start having fun with a lot more movement in the city. I'm definitely looking forward to powering up the Skyline Express in the back. Unfortunately, they sent me one wrong piece to finish off a car, and I will add some additional girders and track to finish off a larger portion of the area with the Skyline Express and build some cool things inside. I did set this up just for fun today. We do have a bike race with a finish line, and I pulled out as many of the figs that I could find and add them to all of our bicycles. We've got stormtroopers and snowtroopers enjoying coffee. We've got different people riding bicycles, good and bad. I believe that I added a good guy to the front of the finish line, and then we have several troopers over here enjoying some coffee from the donut coffee stand over here. We just finished up a little corner deli build that hopefully will mock into something a bit larger. But I think this is a fun setup for May 4th with all of the Star Wars figs doing their thing. I do love a good bike race, and we have our bike stand as well, and just a whole lot of good Star Wars fun for May the 4th. All right, so what is the plan moving forward after this? Well, we have a lot of new work to do in the city, and I don't want to ignore the train area down below. So we need to at least get a working track running underneath the city and hopefully implement one of the switch tracks so that I can get the cargo train set up as well. Then on top of the city, what do we need to do? Well, of course, we need to fill in the tile for the water and get that looking nice. That's a really easy, just time-consuming task, but nothing that requires a whole lot of thought. The next thing we need to do is sort of solidify the elevated train track and what we need in terms of parts and pieces, because as it stands, it works and it holds up the train perfectly fine, but is not so pretty to look at. Then after that, what we need to do is sort of get going on some Mills plates. I actually ordered a ton of Mills materials from Slovenia, and that should be arriving by Monday of next week. So I'm actually looking forward to that. And we can create some more Mills plates to get the city all up to the same level. And from there, we're going to talk about what kinds of roads we're going to add in and where the best place to add them would be. We can certainly add roads that go through, under and through the train track, out the other side, take a left, take a right. We obviously want them to make sense as much as possible in the city, but we might have to, sort of account for a road going to nowhere off the city, because again, we are not going to have a ton of room to add in road over here. We do need some, but we aren't going to have a ton. We're going to see what other types of buildings we can bring in. There are so many new sets coming out. I want to take it slowly again and take my time with filling in the city space. There is a ton of it to fill in. We have a ton of base plates. We can mark out where things will go. We are hoping to get the Skyline Express motorized once we grab some more power functions. So that seems like a lot to do. We've got a ton of work to do in the city to make both the top and the bottom look fantastic, but I absolutely love where it's going for now. So we have a lot of work to do, but it will be a lot of fun work, as city building usually is. Now it's time to power up the train and the Ferris wheel at the same time. Remember to like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video. Enjoy the ride.